Alright, so this should be the end of Chapter 13. I'll do a video for the Chapter 13 review, and always, you should probably make a stab at doing the review before watching the video, and maybe only watch the video problems that you didn't get the right answer for. So I'll go through this more or less quickly. It doesn't feel that long either, which is kind of nice. The first problem, part A of it anyways, wants me to make a frequency distribution. And a frequency distribution is just a two-column table. The first column is called the class, and the second column is called the frequency, but sometimes we make better names than class and frequency. But if I called the first column class and the second column frequency, it wouldn't be wrong. It's just kind of generic. And for this particular problem, the scores are IQ scores, and they're IQ scores of 6th graders. It'd probably be nicer if I used something like IQ score instead of the word class, but if you use class, that would be fine. And then instead of frequency, maybe the number of students that had that. I'll use the number symbol because I don't know if I can fit the word number. But if you chose your headers for class and frequency, it's completely fine. I was told to make the first class 90 to 97, which means the second class has to start one higher than the first class, which is 98, and the difference between 90 and 97 is 7, so I'm going to add 7, and 98 plus 7 is going to be 105. So this class is going to end at 105. I need to get up to 120, so 105 isn't a good enough ending number. I'll bump this up 1 and go to 106, and then 106 plus 7 is 113. Bump 113 up 1 to 114. 114 plus 7 is 121. So now I have room for every number between 95 and 120. And it's nice if we have the room to make the bottom row say total. Now I'm just going to fill in the second column, which is the number of students in each class. In the first class, I'm going to count all of those, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 students that had IQs between 90 and 97. And then between 98 and 105, I'm going to count all of these. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 students have IQs between 98 and 105. And then between 106 and 113 is most of the rest of them. It's all of those. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then the last class between 114 and 121, there's 1. And then I should total these, and it should add up to 20 because there's 20 numbers in this table. 5 plus 7 is 12. 12 plus 7 is 19. 19 plus 1 is 20. So this would get you full credit on the test, as long as you have the kind of the numerical part of the frequency distribution correct. I'm pretty lenient on the names. So total number of observations, well, that was given. There were 20 student IQ scores, so there's no work for that. Compute the width of each class. To do the width of each class, you need to subtract the first or last numbers in successive classes. So for the width for this, I can go 98 minus 90. That would give me 8. I could go 121 minus 113. That would give me 8. If you just as long as you subtract either the first or the last number in classes that are adjacent to each other, you're going to get this class width, and in this particular problem the class width is 8. D wants the midpoint of the third class. The third class, this is the first class, second class, third class, and to do the midpoint you add the lowest plus the highest, the lower class limit plus the higher class limit, and divide by 2. So for the midpoint of the third class, I'm going to take the lower class limit of the third class, which is 106, plus the higher class limit and divide by 2. I'm going to use my calculator and parentheses to do that. So if we clear this out and go parentheses 106 plus 113 divided by 2, and I get 109.5, and I'm content with a decimal answer. So I'm going to say the midpoint of the third class is 109.5. For the modal class, I'll call this bimodal. There's 2 classes that have 7, which is the highest frequency of any class. So I'm going to use the class from 98 to 105 and the one from 106 to 113 and say it's bimodal, because modal is the most, and it says or classes. So both 98 through 105 and 106 to 113. And then the last one, if I had to make one more class, it'd start at 122, and then I had to add 7, and 122 plus 7 is 129. So if I had to make one more class, it would go from 122 to 129. So that's everything for the frequency distribution in problem 1. Problem 2 wants me to make a histogram and a polygon, and I'll do it on the same graph. So I'm going to make a kind of first quadrant of a Cartesian coordinate system. The x-axis I'm going to call income, and I could write in thousands of dollars if I want, but income would be sufficient. Just taking the header of the x column and writing it underneath the x-axis, and then I'm going to take the header of the y column and write it along the y-axis. And now I'm going to take these ranges and put them on the x-axis. So I'm going to go 25 to 35, 36 to 46, 47 to 57, 58 to 68, and 69 to 79, more or less equally space these on the x-axis, and I don't need to show the total. And now I'm going to make marks going up through 8 on my y-axis, and I think I can go by 1. Makes it easier to plot if I go by 1, but I can go by 2 as well. If I didn't have enough room to get up to 8, I could increment by 2 on the y-axis. That would be fine. Now I'm going to do the polygon first, because I kind of destroy the polygon as I make the histogram. So the first point I'm going to plot above the 25 to 35, I'm going to go up 2 and make a dot. And then 36 to 46, I'm going to go up to 5 and make a dot. 47 to 57, I'm going to go up to 8 and make a dot. 58 to 68, go up to 4 and make a dot. 69 to 71, go up to 1 and make a dot. And now I'm going to connect each dot with a line segment. And so I'm going to say frequency polygon in black. And I would almost expect you to do the graphs at once as opposed to do separate graphs. So you'll notice that if you look at what Excel did for me, Excel, well, I didn't probably do so well here. On the histogram, I have the number of families and the income nicely, and for whatever reason, when I took the time to write a polygon, it changed the headers on my axes. My axes should be the same. It should say the income on the x-axis and the number of families on the y-axis. And you'll notice that when I did the polygon on Excel, it incremented the axis by 5. That was just the default, and I didn't take the time to change it, which is fine. When it did the histogram, it incremented the axes by 2, and I didn't take the time to change it. That was what it wanted to do just instinctively. So there aren't hard and fast rules for how you have to create histograms and polygons, but I'm kind of consistent with myself. And if I'm doing them by hand, I don't care to make the axes twice. So on the same graph, I'm going to do the polygon and the histogram. So I'm going to make a bar to each point that more or less has that point in the center. And Excel doesn't make the bars connect, but if you make your bars connect, it's completely okay. So there is one graph that has both the histogram and the polygon. Like I said, it's generally, if I'm going to do both on the same graph, I usually do the polygon first, but I imagine you could make a histogram first and the polygon second. That would be completely fine. But that's kind of what I'd expect to see on the test question that asks you to make a frequency histogram and a frequency polygon. 3 wants me to make a circle graph, and in order to make a circle graph, I need to take each number that's given and change it to a percent. In order to make the table numbers into percents, I have to add up the numbers in the right-hand column. 125 plus 250 plus 125 is 500, I think, but let me do that. 125 plus 250 plus 125 is 500. And now I'm going to make each number a percent. So I'm going to go 125 divided by 500, 250 divided by 500, and 125 divided by 500, and make each a percent. Well, first I'm going to get a decimal. 125 divided by 500 is 0.25, and 0.25 is equal to 25%. 250 divided by 500 is 0.5, which is 50%, and the last one's the same as the top one, so it's 25%. Now I'm going to make a circle graph, and inside my circle graph I'm going to put both the percents and what the percent stands for. So more or less draw something that's more or less a circle, and then for me it's easy to do 50%, so I'm going to do that first. And it doesn't matter where I put it, so I'm going to make 50% of the circle, so a line that cuts the circle in half, and I'm going to call maybe the top region. I'm going to say this stands for the number of people that own Fords, and it's 50%. So I'm done with that. I need to now make the Chevrolet. Chevrolet's 25%, and 25% is just half of the remaining area. So I'm going to cut the remaining area that's unnamed in half. Call one of the quadrants Chevy and put a percent with it. And then the part that I haven't labeled yet is Chrysler. It's also 25%, so it's the same size. So on the test, I can't imagine giving very complex circle sizes, otherwise your graphs get to be, kind of guesswork, and 50s and 25%, 12.5%, just the kinds of things we did in the video. I think I might have did a 90 and a 10%, but I'd like to think the numbers won't get crazy hard to plot. And again, when you're making your circle graph, just as long as the biggest percent has the biggest part of the circle and the smaller percents are kind of, each slice is relatively correct. So if you had a small, medium, and large in terms of percents, you should have a small, medium, and large sector in your circle. Four wants me to take this pie graph, which you may not be able to see so well if I don't blow it up, and answer questions. So this pie graph represents 500 people that were surveyed, and given the choice, would they like to be smarter, younger, thinner, richer, or none of these? That's kind of a fun survey anyways. And how many of the 500 people replied they'd like to be richer? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the percent that want to be richer, which is 0.44%, which is 0.44 as a decimal, multiply it by the 500 people that were surveyed, and of the 500 people that were surveyed, 0.44 times 500 equals 220. 220 said they'd like to be richer. How many said they'd like to be smarter? Well, 14% said they'd like to be smarter. So 14% as a decimal is 0.14 times 500 is going to give me the number of people, which I think is 280, but I'm not going to do that right off. So 4b 0.14 times 500, it's 70, so idiot. So I couldn't even do that in my head. Sorry about that. Who knows why I thought that was the right answer. Well, good that I used my calculator. So 70 people said they'd like to be smarter. So another frequency distribution, or here's a frequency distribution that we want to answer questions about. On the bottom were grades, I imagine, on a test, and the right-hand column is the frequency, maybe how many students, and how many students scored at least 70. These students that scored between 70 and 79, there were 11 of them, they count into this. These students that scored between 80 and 89 need to be counted, and these 5 that scored 90 to 100 need to be counted. So the number of students, if these represent students and their test scores, 11 plus 8 is 19 plus 5 is 24. And I feel like 24 should be the answer then. Plus 8 is 19, and I did do this again because I have a different answer on my key. I get 24. How many students scored less than 90? So I'm not counting these because they scored over 90. I'm counting those 8 students that scored between 80 and 89. The 11 students that scored between 70 and 79 because they scored less than 90. The 4 students that scored between 60 and 69 scored less than 90. And the 2 students that scored between 0 and 59 scored less than 90. 10. I think I get 25 for that. So that's 8 plus 11 plus 4 plus 2. And that's 25. Determine the mean, median, mode, and mid-range. Mean is you add them up and divide by 2, or divide by 5 because there's 5 pieces of data here. So the mean is 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 20 plus 20 over 5. If I want to do that on my calculator all in one keystroke, I need a parentheses for the numerator. So I'm going to go parentheses 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 20 plus 20, close my parentheses, divided by 5, and I get the mean is 10. For the median, it's the middle piece of data. So the numbers have to be ranked or written in order. To find the median, I cancel out the first and the last, the second and the second from the last, and for this problem there's one number left in the middle, and if that's the case, that number is the median. The mode is the one that occurs the most, which is the 20. And lastly, the mid-range is the low plus the high over 2. So it's the low number 2 plus the high number 20 over 2. That's 22 over 2. So the mid-range is 11. (6b) has the same question, but the median's going to be different and the mode's going to be, well, I guess it's trimodal, or I could say it's no mode, but I can live with either. So let me do this. So first of all, for part B of number 6, I'm going to do the mean, which is going to be 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 6 plus 6 plus 7 plus 7 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 8. So for that, clear parentheses 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 6 plus 6 plus 7 plus 7, close my parentheses, divided by 8. So the mean is going to be 4.75. for the median, I need the numbers written in order. High to low or low to high, it doesn't matter which. Then I cancel out the first and the last, second and second from the last, third and third from the last. Now there's two numbers left, and when there's two numbers left, you need to average those numbers. So I'm going to go 5 plus 6 over 2, which is 11 over 2, and the median's going to be 5.5. For the mode, I think trimodal is the most I would ever do, and I could say 2, 6, and 7 are the modes. If you wanted to, because we haven't done 3 modes, if you said there was no mode, I can live with that. I definitely wouldn't do 4 modes for a setup for a problem, but 3 is kind of the max. But if you wrote no mode, I'd live with that. And then the last one, the mid-range, is going to be the low number 2 plus the high number 7 over 2. That comes out to 9 over 2, which is 4.5. Seven gives me some tests, and Ellie, we know what she's done, and she needs an average of 70 to pass on 6 exams. So first I'm going to find out for part A, for Ellie, the points needed to pass. And that's, she needs to average 70 on 6 tests. So she needs 420 points to pass the class. You need to subtract the points she already has. And that difference is going to be what she needs to get to pass the class. And the points she already has, I'm just going to add her 5 test scores. So I'm going to go 95 plus 70 plus 72 plus 67 plus 85. So far she's managed to get 389 points. She needs a total of 420 to pass. And if I go 420 minus 389, that's going to give me the 31 points that Ellie needs to pass the class. For part B, I have to do a new computation because there's a different points that's needed to get a B than there is to get a C. The points needed to get a B is you need an average of 80 on 6 tests, so you need 480 points. And if I subtract off her total points that she has so far, I'm going to get the 91 points. So this 31 is the number of points to pass, and this 91 is the number of points for a B. Oh, the lowest grade is dropped, so let me get back to this. So her test scores are 95, 70, 72, 67, and 85. So I'm going to drop the lowest test, and there's one more test to go. I'm assuming it's a 100-point test. So now the points that she's going to need to pass, she still needs to average 70, but she's only keeping 5 tests because she's dropping her lowest test and she's taking one more test. So she needs 350 points to pass. And I have to subtract off the points that we're keeping, and she's only keeping those 4 tests, so she's keeping a 90, a 70, a 72, and an 85, so she's keeping 317 points. The difference between the 350 that are needed to pass and the 317 that she has after she drops her lowest test would be 33 points. And that's what she's going to need now to pass. So now this is number of points needed to pass when drop the low test. 8 has a part A and a part B. Range is easy. It wants me to do the range and the standard deviation. The range I don't need my calculator for, but the standard deviation I'm going to use on my calculator because I don't want to do that computation by hand. So the first part of this, the range, is just the difference between the highest minus the lowest. So the range is 8. To get the standard deviation, I'm going to break out my calculator. First thing I'm going to do is clear the screen. Then I'm going to hit the stat button, hit enter on edit, and then delete the stuff that's in there. So delete, 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 delete. Now I type the numbers 10, 10, 14, 16, 8, and 8. I'm going to quit out of this, although I don't think you'd need to. So I'm going to go second in mode. And I'm going to go stat, arrow over once to calc, and hit enter twice. Enter, enter. The number in front of the S is the standard deviation. I'm going to round that to 3.29. So my standard deviation for this data is going to be 3.29. I don't know what the data even stands for, so I'm just going to leave it as a number and not attach any words to it. For part B, with new data, the range is the highest minus the lowest, so it's 15 minus 3, which is 12. And then again, I'm going to use my calculator to do the standard deviation. So I don't care to do it by hand. So for standard deviation, I hit stat, hit enter on edit, and then delete, 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 delete. Type the new data in, 3, enter, 5, enter, 7, enter, 9, enter, 11, enter, 13, enter, 15, enter. Then second in mode, then stat, arrow over to calc, enter, enter, and I'm going to write 4.32 for the standard deviation. Money problem. So part A of number 9, figure out a payment. So that's from the regular TVM solver screen. So I'm going to have to do an N, an I, a PV, a PMT, an FV, a PY, a CY, and I'm going to leave the calculator on end. So as I read through this problem, and a car loan of $25,000, that's the loan amount, that's the PV, and it goes in as a positive. The next group of numbers that I see are 6 years, which is 72 months. That's the N. The other number I see is 3.9%, which is an interest rate. I don't see any more numbers, but there's lots more stuff I need to put in. The PY and the CY have to do with I'm making monthly payments, so the PY and the CY are going to be 12. I have $2 amounts. One of them I'm solving for, the other one needs to be 0. I'm solving for the payment, which means the future value must be 0. So now I'm going to go Apps, Finance, TVM Solver, and then type in N is 72, I is 3.9, PV is 25,000. Don't care about the payment. Let's go to type over. My PY and my CY are okay. So I have everything correct except the payment, and I'm going to hit the green alpha button when the cursor is flashing on the payment and hit enter. And I get $389.99 for my payment. So the first answer for number 9A is $389.99. Part B and Part C I need to get out of the main screen. Part B, I'm going to do balance, and I'm not going to do 2. I need to change 2 years to months, and I'm going to do 2 times 12. 2 years at 12 months per year is going to be the balance after 24 months. I'm going to do balance 24 on my calculator. So after just computing the payment in Part A, I'm going to hit second and quit to get out of the, or second in mode. Let me clear the screen there. Now I'm going to hit apps, finance, and go up or down until you find balance, and I'll get it kind of centered a little bit. So there's balance, and I hit enter, and now I type the number 24 for 24 months, close my parentheses, and after 2 years you owe $17,306. I'm going to round that to 55 cents. And the last part of this, how much interest are we going to pay over the life of the loan? I'm going to use the sum of interest feature on our calculator, and I want to add up the interest from the first payment to the last payment, which is the 72nd payment. So I'm going to do that on my calculator, and to do that I go apps, finance, and I can go up or down until I find the sum of interest. There's the sum of interest. I hit enter on it. Then I type 1,72 for the 72 payments. And then I hit enter. Gives me a negative because it's money I'm spending. It's $3,079, and I'm going to round that to 39 cents. That's it for that problem. Now we're getting close to the end here. We only have a few more problems left, I think. Problem 10, Chris can afford $250 a month for a car, and she's going to take a car loan for 6 years, 5% interest. How much of a car loan can she qualify for? So this one I don't need the special screen, I just need the regular screen. I'm going to leave my calculator on end. First number I see is what she can afford for a car. That's a payment, and payments are generally entered as negatives. The second numbers I see are 6 years and 72 months. Those are the N. The last number I see is a 5 for the interest rate. She's making monthly payments, so the PY and the CY are going to be 12. That leaves me 2 blank dollar amounts, and means one of them 0, the other one I need to get a number 4. And in a car loan, the future value after the loan is paid off is 0, and the PV is the amount of the loan. And I'm trying to find out the amount of the loan, so I'm going to solve for the PV. So I'm going to enter these the best I can. So apps, finance, enter. N is 72, I is 5. Doesn't matter what the PV is, it's going to strike over it. Negative 250 for the payment, 0, 12, and 12. I go up to the PV, hit the green alpha button, and then enter, and I get $15,523.19 is what she can get to have a 6-year loan that's $250 a month. I have 2 problems left. These are savings problems, so the PY and the CY are going to fluctuate depending on the words in the problem. But in the savings problems, I don't need any special screens. I just need the generic TVM solver screen. And in these problems, I look for the keyword every 2 weeks, makes the PY and the CY 26. Twice a month would make it 24. So first number that I'm going to put in after the PY and the CY is this 150. It's an amount that's being paid every 2 weeks, so it's a recurring payment. It goes in the payment. The account already has a balance of $40,000. That goes in the PV. And when I'm saving money, both the PV and the payment are negative. The investment expects to earn 8%, so 8's the I. and find the balance after 20 years. The n is not going to be 20 years. It's 20 years times 26 payments per year. So I'm going to go up to the n and type in 20 times 26. N's going to be 520. So if I enter these, I'm going to find the balance in the future, so I'm going to solve for the future value. So I'm going to do 520 for n, 8 for the I, negative 40,000 for the PV, negative 150 for the PMT. I'm solving for the future value, 26 for the PY and the CY. Have everything in, move up to the FV, hit alpha and solve, and I get $389,753.12. Just in case that's not readable, $389,753.12. But one last problem. This felt really short, so it's not going to be a long test. So Sue wants to have $1 million saved up when she retires. That's going to be, well, let me get through this problem like I normally do. I look for the word that gives me the PY and the CY, because on savings problems, if I'm going to mess up, that's where I'm going to mess up. And in this problem, just like the last problem, it's in every 2 weeks, so the PY and the CY are 12. Now I'll start with the money. The $1 million is the amount she wants to have saved up in the future. That's going to be a future value, and the future value always goes in as a positive unless it's 0. I guess it still doesn't have a negative sign. And the time is 30 years, so the N is going to be 30 years times 26 payments per year. So I'm going to scroll up here to the N and do 30 times 26, and I get 780 for the N. So I've done that number, that number. Next number I see is 9% for the interest rate. And I see no more numbers in the problem. Well, one of the amounts has to be 0 when there's 2 amounts left. And PV and PMT are the ones that I have left. And PV would have an amount if there was some amount in the account already, but there's not some amount in the account already, so it's going to be 0. The payment's what I'm solving for. So, EPS, finance, enter. N is 780, I is 9, PV is 0. I'm solving for the payment. Future value is $1 million. Go up to the PMT, hit alpha and enter, and you get, she needs to put away $250, and I'll round it to 65 cents. Every paycheck essentially for 30 years to get her $1 million if she gets 9% as an interest rate. So I'd never ever put anything on a test that isn't just like one of the review questions. So if you have these problems perfected, then you should do absolutely perfect on the test. There shouldn't be any tricks for you. And then we just have one chapter left. Chapter 4 is our last chapter, so we're already 3/4 of the way through the semester.